All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to yet another episode of the Facts Over Feelings podcast. I'm back once again with my co-host here, Trevor Kaufman. And, it's been a couple of weeks, Trevor, but we are back. Sorry for the brief delay, time off, but we are back at it, talking about more NBA, NFL, college football, you name it. Trevor, we wanted to start off by talking about, I think at least the sport that I'm most engaged with right now, which is the NBA,
Mhm.
because my football team's a disgrace, and my basketball team's actually kind of fun. Trevor, we want to talk about some NBA and more specifically some teams, and we can start talking about the Phoenix Suns because I know Trevor really wants to talk about his Suns. I know they've won 15 in a row as of tonight. They beat the Knicks in convincing fashion, a 21-point victory. And Trevor, before you go on whatever tangent you're going to go on about how they're the best team in the league, I just want to say the Cavs, I think, have been the greatest test for the Suns in this win streak. I mean, you guys rolled over the Knicks. Look at this. I mean, like, it seems like you're rolling over every team. I don't want to speak for you, but I feel like the Cavs actually gave you guys like maybe the most trouble.
The Cavs gave us a hard time. I'll give them some credit there, Ryan.
Thank you.
It's a Wednesday night in Cleveland. How seriously can you take that game? That's my point on that.
Oh, man.
I want to actually, we'll bring in your Warriors too, because Ryan wanted to talk about the Warriors. I want to talk
I
about the
did.
Suns, and this is going to lead to our NBA debate for the night.
Mm.
And the debate is, who is the best team in the NBA right now? Is it my Phoenix Suns, or is it Ryan's? He's a bandwagon, but it's Ryan's Golden
Whoa,
State
whoa, whoa.
Warriors. And here's why I want to say it's my Phoenix Suns. We've won 15 straight games. That's obvious. Even if we hadn't won 15 straight games, I just believe in my role players more than I believe in Golden State's come playoff time. And I get they have, they need Clay to come back. So I think Clay will definitely be a big pickup for them for sure. But I look at our rosters, they're
Mhm.
both deep rosters. I'll give you that, Ryan. But I trust my role players more. I trust Mikal Bridges more than I trust, I don't know who their small forward would be.
Andre
Is it
Iguodala,
Draymond? Draymond's not their small forward, is he?
Wiggins, Andrew Wiggins.
Iguodala, I mean, he's old. I trust DeAndre Ayton more than any big guy they have. I trust our bench scoring. I think it matches up very well with their bench scoring. I believe we're fifth in the NBA in bench scoring right now, which is above Golden State. We're averaging 38.6 bench points per game.
Mm.
We have the highest shooting percentage of any team in the NBA. We also lead the league in assists per game by a team. So for me, I think we're just a slightly better version of the Golden State Warriors, as crazy as that might sound. I think we're just a fine-tuned machine. And the Warriors are also a fine-tuned machine, but I think we're slightly more fine-tuned than they are, as crazy as that might sound.
Is that all you have for me, Trevor? Is that it? Is that the
Here's the
pitch? Is
thing.
that the pitch for the Suns?
Here's the problem. We haven't seen the Warriors without with Clay yet, and I think
That's
that's a
true.
huge thing. I think without Clay, we are definitely better. Um, we'll see. We play him on Tuesday without Clay. We play him a few days after that as well. With Clay, it's going to be close. I don't know what kind of impact he's going to have right away coming off of two huge injuries. He looks great. It looks like they've taken the proper time to get him back to 100%. He says he's very eager to get back out on the court. He wants to win a title. He's motivated. I get all that, but we'll see what he looks like come game time, come game speed. Will his body be able to keep up with that for a long NBA season plus the playoffs? I don't know. But the Warriors remind me a little bit of Utah from last year without Clay. Right. They have a clear number one in Steph Curry, but their number two, who's their number two? They don't have a number two. And that's why I think the Phoenix Suns are better, because we have just as good of role players and we have a more clear number two than the Warriors do. Now with Clay, that kind of, again, it's kind of a tough, because Clay would definitely be their number two, obviously.
Of course.
So it's tough. But for right now, I think we're a better team than them. And we'll see how Clay comes, how Clay fits in when he comes back.
Okay, so look, there's a few things I want to talk about here. First off, talking about the Suns. Suns are no doubt one of the best teams in the NBA. Okay, look, we all
Oh, I'm
know
glad
it.
we could finally acknowledge that.
Here's the thing, though. Here's my thing. Like, they've won 15 in a row, Trevor, but I'm going to play a little bit of devil's advocate here. Who have they really played? So they've played 15 games, and the hardest game was some wins against Dallas. Like, let's be honest here. They've played a bunch of average, bad, some decent low end playoff teams, but Dallas is the best team you've beaten on this win streak. And the only thing here is like, I don't know if this shows us something we don't already know. Like if I'm looking at this schedule, I like obviously you never think you're going to win 15 straight, but like game by game, you're like, okay, the Suns should win all of these games. So like they've done what we've all expected them to do. So, this win streak doesn't change my perception of them. They're
Fair
definitely
enough.
better than all the teams they've played. I'm sure they've been the favorite in every single game on this win streak. So that's something I wanted to point out, right? Like it's not like this changes our worldview of the Suns, right? This
It
is the
does
same
not now.
team we knew, right? So there's that. Secondly, Trevor, I think the Golden State Warriors are just there's too much championship experience on the team. Now, Trevor and I were talking about this off the air. Trevor's like, the Suns made it last year. They have some experience, and that's very true. They do, but and defying all odds, I might add. But the Warriors have made it to five NBA Finals with a lot of these guys. Now, granted, there are a lot of new players, right? You have Bielitsa, a new player, Gary Payton, a new player. Damian Lee wasn't around, Jordan Poole wasn't around. A lot of these guys weren't around, but the core players, the core three, really, core four, if you
Core
include
four,
Looney,
yeah.
and of core five, you include Iguodala, all were there for all of those finals. So, they have, a lot of experience at being the best. And that's what they are, Trevor, because they're number one in point differential. They score the most in the NBA, and they allow the least number of points in the NBA. I mean, they're just absolutely sensational on both ends of the floor. And again, this is without Klay Thompson. Like I can't stress this enough. Trevor, maybe he won't be as good as he was, but he was a Hall of Famer before. If he's an all-star
He
now,
is.
like that's still, it's still a massive, massive difference. So, I think that with Klay, it just makes it nearly impossible to beat this team, particularly when you have Bielitsa, shooting what? You got him shooting 40% from three, Otto Porter 45%, Andrew Wiggins 37%, Gary Payton 43%. I mean, like adding Klay Thompson to that is it's scary. And I don't see teams being able to compete with their depth. And the Suns do have good depth, but you know, I don't see them slowing down the Warriors. I don't see it. I'm gonna go with the MVP, over the Suns. I'm sorry. And Steph Curry is that MVP. And having two other Hall of Famers on his team, maybe even I don't know if you think Iguodala is he's not, but a really good player, other really good players. I just don't see how you bet against this team. I think that they're as good before the season. I said it. They're gonna be as good as their finals days. They're gonna compete with the best record of all time. I really think so. They're like this 2016 team that went 73-9. Trevor,
Wow.
I wouldn't be surprised if they came close to that this year, barring like a major injury.
Some bold claims. It's going to be tough for me to say that they're going to go 73-9. I'll concede that. I think they could be a 65-68 win team though, for sure. That's definitely possible, but
Yeah.
I get your point. Again, I agree with you on this factor that bringing a Hall of Famer back into the equation when they're
Yeah.
already this good is a little scary to think about.
Mhm.
However, the Warriors are they're more invincible in the regular season than they are come playoff time. And remember that 73 win team,
Whoa.
Ryan. Remember that 73 win team.
Okay.
That team was down 3-1 to Oklahoma City Thunder in the Western Conference Finals, came back and won. And then that team ended up losing to LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavaliers in the finals. So what did they need to do? They went and brought in a top 10 player of all time, Kevin Durant. That was what made this team unbeatable. This team, come playoff time is a little bit more flawed, and it shows. The game gets a little bit more physical. These 3-point percentages from role players start to go down a little bit. They aren't a very big team, so I think size will impact them in the playoffs. Maybe they get Wiseman back. I'm not sure. That could help them. So as invincible as the Warriors look right now, I would be very curious to see how they look in the postseason, because they look, even in their heyday, the 73 win team, that team looked a lot more
Vulnerable?
human-like in the postseason. They were down 3-1 in the Western Conference Finals, and they lost the NBA Finals to the GOAT, albeit. But I'm just saying, we'll see. I really think people are underestimating. I think this is more people underestimating my Suns I get we haven't beaten anybody that great on the road trip or on the winning streak. We play Brooklyn tomorrow. We'll beat them, and then everyone will be like, all right, that argument goes out the window. But
Wow.
I really think Golden State is, if it's the same team as 2016, some of their flaws and some of their, humanness and coming down from God tier,
Mm.
that will show in the playoffs. I'm telling you, just stay patient with me.
Look, here's the thing. Look, I'll touch on this. Like the playoffs are a weird thing, Trevor. Like the regular season, it's a lot different from the playoffs. Like you and I
It
both
is
know this, right?
100%.
And here's the thing. Like if I'm being objective, I stand back and I look at all these teams. Who am I going to put my money on? I'm going to put my money on the guy who's been to 5 NBA finals. I just come playoff time, I typically go with, not only the most talented, but the most experienced, right? There's a reason you never bet against LeBron James. This year's Lakers are a different story, in my opinion, but
He
this
plays
has
the
been well
Suns.
documented. But but look, the point still stands. Like you very rarely bet against teams, especially like cores with this much experience come playoff time, because these guys just know how to get it done, right? These percentages go out the window, really, right? And it becomes who can just execute the most often, make the least number of mistakes on both ends, and typically it's the team with the most experience. So that's why I think
Without
that the
Kevin
Warriors would be
Durant,
the team.
what are these guys? What are their records in the finals without Kevin Durant? They're 1-2. I'm not counting the 20 because Kevin Durant didn't really play in the 2019 finals, right? So I'm counting that as that they didn't have Kevin Durant because he really didn't play.
But I don't even want to count that finals at all. I get the Raptors won it and all, and like credit to them because it was crazy. But they were missing, right? The Warriors were missing two Hall of Famers. So
I'm just saying this team, they've been to 5 finals, they've won 3, but they needed Kevin Durant to really become that dynasty level status. And they don't have Kevin Durant this time around. They have Andrew Wiggins, they have Otto Porter, they have some nice role players. And I don't think their team is that much better than it. In terms of roster talent, they might have the best chemistry of all time. But we'll see. I just don't see this roster being that. If you told me I had to play a healthy Clippers or a healthy Warriors, I would rather play a healthy Warriors team right now.
No way.
I would.
Oh, that is wow. Wow, that is very interesting. All right. So
the Clippers have 4 legitimate bucket getters. The Warriors have 2, Clay and Curry.
Wait. Okay. First off, I can't let you get away with this. This is unbelievable disrespect on Jordan Poole. This guy, when Clay comes back, this guy could win 6th man of the year. I mean, this guy's been absolutely sensational.
He's a good role player.
He's fantastic. Andrew Wiggins, look, he's overpaid, but the guy is scoring efficiently as a role player.
Would be the 5th or 6th best player on the Clippers, as well as he is. He's probably better. He'd be the 5th best player on the Clippers. Jordan Poole would.
Can I just say he'd probably be not probably. He'd be the 3rd best player on the Suns.
He would not be the 3rd best player on the Suns. This is all right. This is getting out of hand.
This is getting out of hand. Look,
if you can't beat him, join him, right, Ryan?
I do.
If you can't beat the Warriors, join them.
I do. I am disrespecting DeAndre Ayton a little here, but I do want to say before we move on from the NBA that Trevor did tell me the other night that Jared Allen is better than DeAndre Ayton. So thank you to the Cavs for getting us 5 years.
That was a text after Jared Allen was feasting on Ayton a little bit in that game, but that was a bit of an emotional response.
Let's just credit Kobe Altman for getting a great deal, 5 years, $100 million, where Ayton's going to get about 70 more. So I had to throw a little bit in there for my boys. But Trevor, this is a good discussion. Look, we'll see what happens with the Warriors and the Suns. We'll get a matchup, Trevor. I believe this upcoming Tuesday, right? I think it's going to be the Warriors and the Suns.
We play them 3 times over the span of the next month, so we'll get a really good idea of how we stack up with them.
Yeah, I mean, if I was you, I wouldn't want to watch these games, but it's up to you. Look, we'll see what happens, and we'll definitely talk about it on next week's podcast. But Trevor, I think that we can move on from this unless you have any final thoughts, anything you want to throw in.
I got no final thoughts. I just want to talk about how much I love Jay Crowder, and I know Ryan does too.
Folks, Jay Crowder is one of the scummiest NBA players you'll ever see. Anyway, look, I don't want to drag this podcast down too much with Jay Crowder talk. It's really sad. Moving on, Trevor, to the NFL. A lot has happened, and luckily, Trevor, today we will not be talking about my Cleveland Browns. Luckily, because man, oh man, what what a drama-filled season it's been. And honestly, Trevor, I say that, but I feel like a lot of teams have as much drama as us. I before we move into these teams, like the Buffalo Bills, Trevor, really some surprising struggles these last couple of weeks. I know they won on Sunday, but just some
Thursday, yeah.
surprising. Yeah, sorry, you're right on Thursday. My bad, but some surprising struggles from them and from a lot of teams. The Ravens, a few other teams, um, Titans. So it's definitely been an interesting last couple of weeks. But Trevor, I wanted to start this off by talking about a team that some people were being, they were blowing it way out of proportion, Trevor. They were over exaggerating. And do you remember when I said a few weeks ago or a month ago, I said, calm down. The Chiefs will be fine. And even I started to question a little bit, but I still said, I said, the Kansas City Chiefs will be just fine. And Trevor, look at them now. We look at them now, Trevor. They've won 4 straight. They're 7-4. I'd say pretty securely first in their division. Assuming they beat the Chargers the second time
Oh yeah,
around.
not
I
securely
know
first, but they're first.
they're first. And it's a big turnaround because they were just 3-4 last month, Trevor. Now they're 7-4. I'd say right back at it, Trevor. And I think that they've kind of dissuaded these haters, kind of talked them down a little bit. Both on both ends of the football, Trevor. I mean, their defense, you can talk about the quality of opponent all you want, but their defense has played better. I mean, they've given up less points, they've given up less
And two
yards.
really quality opponents, in my
Yeah, I mean
opinion.
they haven't been gashed, right? I mean, it's been good. And sure, like the Packers didn't have Aaron Rodgers, they played the Giants, they played some lower quality offenses, but they still, they took care of business and their offenses look better and better. So, I think there's really not too much to say on the Chiefs other than the fact that I think people were just overreacting, Trevor. I mean, like, I don't know. Patrick Mahomes was always going to be fine. They've come out and just taken care of business these last 4 weeks. I really don't have too much to say. I mean, their team's number one in first downs on offense. I mean, their offense is as elite as ever. I think they're the first in yards. I mean, this team knows how to get it done. And their defense has gone from one of the worst to honestly like kind of average now. I mean, they get decent amount of turnovers. They're middle of the pack there. Middle of the pack in yards allowed per game. Their defense is fine now. So I mean that's enough for them. And point being, Trevor, people didn't need to worry so much. The Chiefs are gonna make the playoffs. They'll be just fine.
I agree with you, Ryan. I want to highlight their defense because on this 4-game winning streak, their defense hasn't been bad or average. Their defense has been elite. And I'm being serious when I say that. They've given up an average of 12 points per game over their last 4 games. They've also forced, I believe it is 7 or 8 turnovers. They forced 8 turnovers over those last 4 games as well.
Yep, that's right. 8.
So their defense is opportunistic. It's forcing turnovers. It's held to elite. I would say the Raiders have an elite offense. It's inconsistent, but it can be an elite offense.
The Cowboys.
The Cowboys most certainly have an elite offense.
Mm-hmm.
They held the Raiders to 14 points and they held the Cowboys to 9 points. That is elite, if you ask me, while forcing 3 turnovers in each of those in each of those 2 games.
Mm-hmm.
So the defense has been the huge turnaround for Kansas City. Their offense to me hasn't been that great. I mean, they only had the one big game. They only put up 20 against the Giants. They only put up 13 against the Packers.
True.
They only put up 19 against the Cowboys. So to me, I think the defense has been the huge turnaround for the Kansas City Chiefs, and that is exactly why they've played themselves right back into contention for that 1 seed in the AFC and the division.
Yeah, I mean, you're definitely right. I mean, I like that you highlighted the turnovers that they've generated these last few games, and I don't have too much to say about it. I mean, I guess I can highlight their rushing defense. Like it's been pretty sensational. I mean, they've only allowed over 82 yards rushing in one game these last 4 games. I mean, that's against any team, that's pretty hard to do. Allowing 82 yards or less in 3 of 4 from rushing. I mean, that's really good. And they haven't given up over 250 yards in any of these 4 games from passing wise. So, I mean, their defense has been elite in both aspects and obviously generating turnovers, winning the turnover battle in, I believe, all but one of these games. I think the only game they lost the turnover battle was against the Giants. But yeah, I mean, this team will be just fine, Trevor. They're going to be one of the best come playoff time. And, it just shows you not to overreact to, a slow start. Obviously there was some concern, but, I think some people overreacted. So I think that these last 4 weeks have kind of, you know, toned that down quite a bit.
I would agree, Ryan. I want to talk about another surging team in the AFC, and that is the
Mm,
Indianapolis Colts.
mm.
And I think the Colts haven't been given enough credit. I want to come out and say that I defended the Carson Wentz move. I thought it was the right place for him, and I think he's actually played really well. He's barely turned the ball over this year. I think he only has 3 interceptions on the entire season. Yeah, he only has 3 interceptions on the entire season. He's thrown for 2,500 yards and 18 touchdowns. They just demolished a really good Bills team. Jonathan Taylor is an elite all-pro running back.
Yeah.
And when the Bills get a true number one wide receiver, I think this offense will take another step, right? Michael Pittman's good, but I don't know if he's a true number one. And then you look at the other guys Carson Wentz has been throwing to. Zach Pascal, Jonathan Taylor has the third most targets on the team and the second
Watch
most
T.Y. Hilton.
receptions. Mo Alley Cox is a tight end. Naheem Hines is a running back. Jack Doyle is a tight end, right?
Yep.
So Carson Wentz is basically throwing to 2 receivers on this team and then all running backs and tight ends.
Yep.
So give him a lot of credit. He has done a really good job. And I think this defense is a lot better than people give it credit for. Obviously, Darius Leonard is an elite defender, but Bobby Okereke is another elite linebacker for this team. DeForest Buckner is a very solid interior defensive lineman with 4.5 sacks and 6 tackles for loss on the season. They just held the Buffalo Bills to 15 points in their last game on Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
And with the Tennessee Titans being so beat up, I would not count Indianapolis out of this division. Now, it would take an all-time miracle to win the division, just because Tennessee has the double tiebreaker. They've beaten them twice. But the way Tennessee's looking, they got to go to New England this weekend. The Colts are surging. Maybe it could happen. But I do think Indianapolis is going to be a playoff team, and they will be a tough out in the wild card round. I think they're playing really good football right now on both sides of the ball. And I really want to highlight Carson Wentz because I think he's gotten a lot of flack and a lot of crap given his way.
Yeah.
And I think he's having a really, really solid season. And he's on pace for 4,000 yards and 30 touchdowns. So I think he deserves a lot of credit. And give this Colts team some props. They're playing good football right now. And I also wanted to mention that I called that. I said Wentz would be better in Indianapolis, and I was right. But go ahead, Ryan.
Trevor, look, I don't know, man. I doubted this team. I thought that they were going to be. I mean, the start of the year was horrible. They were 1-4.
Ryan almost picked the Jags over the Colts.
I did, and I mean, look at this team now.
I'm not trying to diss you. I'm pointing out facts here.
Look, Trevor. Look, here's the thing. Like this team, Jonathan Taylor's led this team. Like there's no doubt about it. And the defense has been really, really good. I mean, they've given up over 20 points once in their last, I believe, 6 games. I mean that's sensational right there, no matter the opponent. And I think the other thing I wanted to highlight, you highlighted Carson Wentz. The other thing I wanted to highlight was 0 turnovers by the offense in the last 3 games, Trevor. Not a single turnover in the last 3 games. Now that is a recipe for success. I mean, that's just going to win you games. Not turning the ball over at all in 3 straight. And in that span, Trevor, generating 7 turnovers by the defense. Like they got 4 turnovers against the Bills last week. I mean, this team just, they've been winning the turnover battle week after week. And they're seemingly a very well-coached team. And really credit to Carson Wentz, seriously. Like not only on the turnovers, but, like fighting through injuries, Trevor. We remember earlier in the season, he hurt both ankles. You remember that? At one point, both his ankles were banged up. Maybe he could have taken a few weeks off, let them fully heal, but he didn't do that. He stood in there, stayed in the games, and has gotten his team wins. He doesn't have to be a Patrick Mahomes, a Kyler Murray, a Josh Allen, and Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady. He needs to be, a high-end game manager. He needs to make throws when it matters, but really he just needs to limit the turnovers, not make bad throws, and keep the offense running efficiently. And that's what he's done this season, and that's what he's done especially this last month. And this team definitely can make a run for Tennessee here, especially if Tennessee goes and loses this Sunday. Now, I will say the Colts do need to beat the Buccaneers, so that's going to be a tall order. But we've seen the Buccaneers be beatable, Trevor, this last month. I mean, this team isn't some unbeatable monster, right?
No,
I mean,
they're not.
They have lost some games, most notably. I mean, the Saints just a few weeks ago, and they've had other losses. Yeah, I mean, right? They just lost to Washington. I mean, what is going on there? So point is, the Colts can easily do this, and it'll definitely be fun to watch. Because I was not looking forward to Tennessee just walking in into the playoffs with a free division win. So credit to the Colts for this. And yeah, I mean, I'm glad Trevor highlighted Carson Wentz because it's exactly what needed to be highlighted.
Thank you, Ryan. I'm glad that you agreed with me. I know Ryan wants to talk about one other team. Yeah, he
I
does.
do. Yes, I do.
Please go ahead.
Trevor, look, here's the thing. Look, you've talked about this team a few times, the New England Patriots. And it just needs to be talked about. Look, I'm annoyed that this team has been playing so well because, I look, they've had their time. Why did they get to be so good again? No, they've been good for 20 years. Why do they have to have one down year and they're back at it? But here they are. Their defense, Trevor, is just, I mean, it's absolutely sensational. I mean,
Really
I
good.
think I think they're number one in points allowed. They're number one in interceptions as a defense. They're third in the league in yards allowed, I believe. I mean, it's just this team. This team's just elite. They're second best in rushing touchdowns allowed, second fewest rushing touchdowns allowed, third best turnover percentage by the defense. It's just been fantastic. And the offense, it's not great, but it's super efficient, Trevor. Mac Jones has by really far and away been the best rookie quarterback from this draft. And I want to pat myself on the back here because look, I said it was going to be the case. I said Mac Jones was going to be really good, and look at him. He's been definitely
He's in
the
the
best
best,
rookie
for sure.
quarterback. Not just the game manager, but these last few weeks making some tough throws, finally expanding that playbook for him a little bit, making some throws down the field in contested coverages. And it's been great to see. So, credit to Mac Jones, credit to this offense and defense for just playing really good football. Limiting the turnovers, limiting the penalties, doing all the right things that a normal Belichick coach team would do. And they're just a hard team to beat, Trevor. I mean, they're just a hard team to beat. They have the second best point differential in the league behind the Bills, after this Thursday. And yeah, I mean, I think the true test is going to be at Buffalo in 2 weeks, Trevor. Can they get that done? If they can, I think the division's theirs. But we'll see what happens. They definitely have a lot going for them. And I just wanted to shout out their defense and Mac Jones specifically.
You make a lot of great points there for sure. Bill Belichick has done a fantastic job. Josh McDaniels has done a fantastic job. And I think the story of this team is they do two things really well. One, they play great defense, and two, they don't beat themselves. They don't turn the ball over very much.
Mm.
And yeah, Mac Jones may be a little limited in terms of arm skill and arm talent, right? He's not Patrick Mahomes. He's not a Justin Herbert or anything like that.
Mm.
But he's a great, or I shouldn't say a great, but so far he's been a really good game manager, and he gives them enough offense to where they can win games. And they've been able to score points. I mean, I look at their last 5 games during this 5-game winning streak. They've put up at least 24 points in every game. They've put up a 50-point game. They've had a 45-point game against Ryan's Browns, albeit. And I
Ugh.
I don't think they're going to win the division. I get Buffalo's had their struggles, but I do think Buffalo
Same.
is going to figure it out. They're going to turn a corner. We saw it a little bit last night. They put up a dominating performance against a decent Saints team on the road.
Yeah.
So I do think New England will be a wild card team, but I do think they've set themselves up great for future years. If they can bring JC Jackson back, who's going to be a free agent, if they can get Mac Jones a weapon or two in terms of receivers, right? Because their receivers are god awful. Kendrick Bourne, and I couldn't even tell you who the other one is. They have decent young running backs. They have good tight ends. They have an up and coming offensive line, a good offensive line.
Mm-hmm.
And as Ryan mentioned, they have an elite defense. I think they have a lot of parts around Mac Jones. They need to get him a weapon, and they need to bring back JC Jackson and keep this defense intact. And for me, I think New England can be a really, really good team for years to come. But for this year, I know Ryan brought up the division. I do think Buffalo, with Josh Allen, with the better weapons, I do think Buffalo is going to win the division. But give New England a lot of credit because they have absolutely exceeded expectations.
Yeah, no doubt. And they're different teams, but I liken it to like the Bengals. Like I think both teams need one more year. These
They
teams
do.
they've played well in stretches, right? They both struggled in stretches. It's kind of backwards for the Bengals and the Patriots. One started hot, one's cooled off, vice versa. I think both teams need one more year. I definitely agree with you, but I wanted to highlight them because they really have exceeded expectations. They've been a lot better than I thought they would be, and as Trevor said, better than he thought they would be. So I think it'll definitely be interesting to watch them going forward. But I think Buffalo wins that division. That being said, Trevor, look, I think that about does it for the NFL, right? Unless you have anything else to add, we can move on to talk about our final topic for this podcast, Trevor, which is the college football playoff. And, we wanted to talk about this. And Trevor, correct me if I'm wrong, because I actually didn't look at the standings prior to this podcast, but I'm pretty sure it was 1 Georgia, right? 2 Ohio State, 3 Alabama, and 4 Cincinnati. I
That's
believe that
correct.
is the top 4. That is the top 4. And, I wanted to ask you first, Trevor, is this the right top 4? Like, do you think the committee finally has it right?
Yes, this is absolutely the top right 4. This is exactly how I would have ranked them. I'm glad that they leapfrogged Ohio State over Alabama because Alabama is clearly, in my opinion right now, not better than Ohio State. The way Ohio State looked against Michigan State this past weekend, the dominance that Ohio State has on the offensive side of the ball, and now that their defense has gotten healthier in terms of their front seven, I think Ohio State is the only team right now in the country that can really give Georgia a real run for its money just because Georgia's defense is so good and Ohio State's offense is so good. I think that'd be a fantastic matchup.
Mm.
I'm glad that they finally gave Cincinnati a chance. Cincinnati is absolutely one of the best teams in the country. And let's just go based on the committee's rankings, right? Cincinnati went into number 6 Notre Dame, who, by the way, is overrated. Notre Dame is not the 6th best team in the country. But with that being said, they went into Notre Dame and demolished the 6th ranked. I shouldn't say demolished, but they handily beat the 6th ranked Notre Dame
Yeah,
Irish.
yeah.
You know what I mean? This past
100%.
weekend, they demolished a really good, 8-win SMU team. And last night, they beat a decent East Carolina team. So now, or I shouldn't say last night, I should say tonight that they did. So now Cincinnati's one win away against Houston from potentially making the playoff. And here's why I say potentially.
Mm.
Will Cincinnati get in over hypothetically, a 1-loss Big Ten champion Michigan? A 1-loss, no, Ohio State would have 2 losses. I'm sorry. A 1-loss Big 12 champion and a 1-loss Georgia and Alabama. There's a lot of teams there.
Yeah.
So for me, it's going to be interesting to see how these conference rivalry games and these conference championship games play out. I think having Notre Dame ranked so high is going to be beneficial for Cincinnati, especially since Notre Dame has only 1 easy game left on their schedule and they're probably going to win it. So Notre Dame's going to finish the season 11-1. So ideally, Notre Dame won't be able to drop that far. But for me, there's just some scenarios where if I'm a Cincinnati fan, I'm nervous. What if Oklahoma or Oklahoma State wins their next 2 games? They go 12-1 with a Big 12 title. What if Alabama beats Georgia in the SEC title game? You got a 1-loss Georgia, you got a 1-loss Bama. What if
I'd actually say that the scarier thing, Trevor, would be if Georgia beat Alabama. Do you put a 2-loss Alabama? Do you keep them in that top 4? Do you keep a 2-loss Bama in the top 4?
For me, I don't. Just the way Alabama's looked, I don't think so because Alabama hasn't looked dominant. Alabama's looked very pedestrian, and the eye test doesn't make me believe that they would do that, right?
Yeah.
So we'll see. I think there's scenarios where Cincinnati doesn't get in, but there's still a lot that can happen. I do think these rankings are correct. The only thing I think they messed up a little bit, I think Notre Dame is too high, obviously.
Yes.
I think
they always are.
I think Oklahoma's too low. I think Oklahoma's better than Ole Miss. Baylor did beat them, but I don't know, road game. We'll see. And I think Oklahoma State's also a bit of a slept-on team. Watch out for Oklahoma State because they have a seriously good defense. And Oklahoma State's a team that nobody's talked about. They play Oklahoma this weekend, and then if they win, I believe they play Baylor in the Big 12 title game. So 2 top 10 wins for Oklahoma State in the final 2 weeks. That might be enough to get them in the playoff as well. So there's a lot of college football left to be played. They did get the rankings right. I do like Michigan at 5. I would have put Oklahoma State at 6. And then I probably would have put Baylor 7. I probably would have gone Baylor 7. And then from there, it doesn't really matter. I probably would have gone Baylor 7, Ole Miss 8, Oklahoma 9, Notre Dame 10. I really think Notre Dame's a little bit overrated.
I agree with you.
That's the point.
Yep. Look, Trevor. Look, I'm gonna make this pretty brief. I agree with you. I think that I think it's pretty clear that they got this right. I think that, it's probably not going to stand like this. Look, one of Ohio State, Bama, and Georgia is going to lose another game, and we'll
Right.
see what happens. If Georgia loses, Bama and Georgia are both in. If Bama loses, I want to say Bama's out, but the committee, I don't know, Trevor. Like if the committee's going to put a two-loss team in, it's going to be Bama. Like it's just the all right. They love the SEC because like the
They
SEC
do.
is super brutal. No matter how you think Bama's looked throughout the year, and I think it's entirely possible, depending on how they lose to Georgia. If it's like a heartbreaker, a really close game, they could really stay in that top four. I really see it. Ohio State and Michigan, whoever wins this next game, Trevor, we'll see what happens. If Ohio State loses this game and then beats Michigan in the title game, are they in? Are both of them in? What happens? I don't know.
If
Or are they
Ohio
on
State
the? Or are
loses,
they
they're
on
not
the?
going to.
Or are
If
they on the
Ohio
same?
State
Are they on the same side? Are they on the
if
same
Ohio
side of
State
the?
loses,
Okay.
Michigan goes to the title
Yeah,
game.
you're right. Okay. I'm sorry. So they're on the same side of the Big Ten. My bad. But if okay, so regardless, whoever wins this game, I think gets into the top four. Really, we'll see what happens. I guess if one of them wins this and then somehow loses in the title game, then like sure, maybe they wouldn't be in. But I think that it's possible two-loss Ohio State team beating Michigan could make it in. We'll
I
see.
think I think a nightmare scenario for Cincinnati would be
Yeah.
this. Oklahoma State goes 12-1, right? A one-loss Big 12 champion.
Yep.
Um, I think
I think.
yeah, I think Alabama beating Georgia.
Yeah.
And then I think no, the Big Ten will kind of play itself out because Ohio State and Michigan both have a loss.
Trevor, I think it might be Michigan's undefeated, correct? Correct me if I'm
Michigan
wrong.
has a loss. Michigan has a
They
loss.
have a loss. Who did?
Yes.
Okay,
So
then
that
never
makes things
mind.
a little bit easier
Yes, it does.
for
Because I was going to
Cincinnati.
say if Michigan was undefeated and they beat Ohio State but lose in the title game, do they stay in the top four?
Right.
Probably.
That
But
won't be an
because
issue.
you're not going to put a two-loss Big Ten team in there, I would agree. I don't think the Big 12 is a threat. I don't. I mean, Oklahoma State, if they beat
I
Oklahoma,
really think
maybe.
Oklahoma State's going to make a run. And again, people are sleeping on them. They have the second best scoring defense in the country.
Yeah.
And their offense is not as good as some of the elite offenses like Ohio State or Alabama's, but it's good and it can put up points.
Yeah.
And we'll see how they stack up against Oklahoma this weekend. I think that's going to be a fantastic game. And Oklahoma could find its way in, honestly. I think if Oklahoma wins these next two games and goes 12-1, they have a pretty decent argument for the playoff as well, right? Their only loss would be on the road to a top 10 Baylor team, which is as good of a loss as there is in the
Yeah.
entire country. As
Agreed.
crazy as this might sound, Ryan, based on where they're ranked, Notre Dame has a route to the playoff.
That's ridiculous. It really is.
Michigan probably loses to Ohio State. Let's just say that happens. Let's say Cincinnati loses in the American title game. Who are you going to put in, a one-loss Cincinnati or a one-loss Notre Dame? And then let's say, I guess you maybe put a two-loss Alabama over both those teams in that scenario,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So I think it's going to be very interesting to see how this top four will shake out after conference championship weekend. But go ahead.
Can I just say one more thing before we wrap this up, Trevor? I think it's
Mhm.
an absolute travesty, and I know you touched on it. I think it's a travesty that Notre Dame is sixth. I really do. I mean, it's pretty disgusting.
Yeah.
They beat one top 25. Sorry,
Yeah,
they
I
beat
agree. They're
they beat
very
zero
overrated.
top. They beat zero top 25 teams. Sure, Wisconsin top 25 now, but when they played them, they were 1-2 or 1-3. They were
Top
struggling.
25 when they beat them, to be fair. But you're right. You're right.
Were they?
I
Because
think so.
I know Wisconsin struggled really badly at the start of the year.
They actually might have not been.
I really don't think they were, because Wisconsin was 1-2 going into that. No, they were 1-1 and then they lost Notre Dame. So maybe, yeah, they might have been ranked.
Yeah, I agree. Notre
Regardless,
Dame
it's not that good of a win. They lost to Cincy at home,
by two
and they
scores.
right by 11, and they've beaten nobody else. Like they almost lost to North Carolina. They almost lost to Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech's a decent team, but they're not ranked. Since when was beating a bunch of unranked opponents good enough to get you in the top 6 over an Oklahoma State, or even Oklahoma for that matter, Trevor? I mean, you're right. Like they lost to Baylor, who was another top 10 team. Why do they deserve to be at 10? That doesn't make sense.
They're
to
not.
me.
They're at 6.
No, I'm talking about Oklahoma. Why do they deserve to be at 10
I'm sorry.
instead of Oklahoma or instead of Notre Dame? I don't get it. So it's just the committee has some weird biases, Trevor. The SEC bias I personally get because of the gauntlet of the schedule, but Notre Dame doesn't even have a conference. They play one ranked team, I guess two. They lose pretty handily by one, and they beat another one who's not very good in my opinion. So it's just it's frustrating because I feel like it's the same bias every year. You got Notre Dame, USC, and Texas always overrated. Every single year, and it's frustrating. Sure, Notre Dame's obviously better than the other two, but the big program names like that, they seem to always get, a leg up on everybody else. So to me, it's a little bit frustrating. And I know you agree with me in the Notre Dame sense.
I totally agree with you. And the good news is the silver lining here is Notre Dame has the least amount they can do to boost their resume in terms of the end of the season, right? You look at a team like Oklahoma State who's sitting at 7th. They have a chance to beat their rival who's ranked in the top 10. And then if they win, they'll play another top 10 team next weekend in a neutral site Big 12 championship game. So I think Oklahoma State would absolutely leapfrog Notre Dame in that situation. You look at another team like Oklahoma, I guess, same scenario. Yeah. And then that's it. I mean, those are really the only relevant cases that could realistically make the playoff over Notre Dame, right? I don't think they'll put in a 2-loss Ole Miss or a 2-loss Baylor.
Yeah, they won't.
So Baylor's an interesting story, though. They have a lot of good wins, just 2 losses early in the season.
And by the way, Trevor, this is why I think making it a 6 or 8 team playoff would be more fun. A lot of these teams have the potential to beat these top 4 teams. And they've done it, right? Like, so I
like the idea of 6, or I like the idea of 12. Or 10. I don't like the idea of 8. Here's why. Because I think there should be some reward for being at the top.
Yes,
right?
No, you're right.
Either the top 2 teams should get a bye, or the top 4 teams should get a bye, right? So that's why I said it should be 6 or 12. 8, yeah, but like 8, all you really get is you get a conference game at home, or a campus game at home. So for me, there's not as much of a reward being top 4 in an 8-team scenario as there would be in a 6-team or a 12-team.
Yeah, no, I mean,
that's just my personal.
No. I totally agree with you. I think I've said it before. I'll say it again. I think 6 is the best. Because it gets those teams that are on the border in there. By the way, Notre Dame, it would annoy me if they got in. And then it also gives those top 2 seeds a bye, which they definitely deserve for being top 2. So, I mean, I think I agree. I mean, we've talked about this before. But, yeah, Trevor, I think this is a good discussion. I'm glad we got to touch on some college football here. And it'll definitely be interesting. Championship week's coming up in a few weeks. We got some big games this weekend. So it'll be fun. So we'll see what happens there. But we will talk about that next week. And I think, Trevor, that just about does it for this podcast. I don't know if you have any shout outs, anything you want to say before we go. But if you do, now's the time.
I don't have much. I'll shout out my U of A basketball team for beating a top 5 ranked Michigan team at a neutral site a little while back. Kudos to them.
There you
go. Other than that, that's all I got. Go Suns, go Cards. We're on a roll. Let's keep it going.
There you go. I mean, if we're going with shout outs, I might as well go with hey, I know I don't go there, but my Auburn Tigers. Look, battle for Atlantis, lost the double OT game to UConn, but bounced back, beat Loyola Chicago and Syracuse. Team's looking good. Trevor, I'm telling you right now, calling it right now, everyone, Jabari Smith will be the best. He will either be the number 1 pick or the best prospect from this upcoming draft. The guy is sensational. Keep an eye out for him. Pray he gets on your team.
Atlantis?
Huh? Yeah, of course. He averaged about 20.
Okay. I didn't even know.
Yeah, he averaged about 20 a game. He's a 6'10" guy who can shoot. He's basically the next Kevin Durant. But I'll leave it at that. Trevor, I think this is a great way to wrap it up. I'm glad we got to end on this. And yeah.
I'll give it to you. I'll let you have it.
Thank you. And, Cavaliers, Evan Mobley comes back tomorrow. Everyone watch out for that Rookie of the Year. So, it was a good podcast. Hope everyone enjoyed. And we will be back next week with another one. So stay tuned and we'll see you later.
Go Suns.